What is going on, YouTube universe? Welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, where today we finally wrap up the final round of the home and away season for 2025. I've given myself a week to reflect on the round, to get myself fit and healthy again because I've been very unwell, and this gap also allowed me to work out the fact that I have been fumbling my votes for many weeks, and I had to go back to the beginning and recount every single vote to this point in time. So at least today, you guys are going to get a definitive vote count to determine my MVP for the 2025 season. Silver lining. Might have taken a little bit extra to get this video out, but it allowed me to get shit like this done. So, hooray me. As I said, round 24 officially wrapped up, and that does mean for 10 teams, the AFL season for 2025 is officially over, and this particular round had a lot of bearing on the top 8, and it is crazy to think that even with one game to go, we had a handful of teams still yet to have their final fates dictated on that ladder, and it came down to a very anticlimactic game to wrap the round up that put everything finally in place. We'll get to it when the time comes. But ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, let's unpack the final round of the AFL season. It all kicked off on the Thursday night at the MCG with Essendon taking on Carlton, one of many dead rubber games for this weekend. The whole round really fell into one of two categories. Either it was a dead rubber game and nobody really gave a shit unless you were actively supporting that particular team and you wanted your team to get a win, and the other slot was teams vying for that top 8 position and jostling to see where they would land. Unfortunately for Essendon and Carlton fans, they were probably the only ones excited to tune into this game at all. As a neutral, I thought hopefully maybe this might be somewhat of a decent game to watch because both of these teams are situated very similarly on the ladder. Carlton have heavily underperformed. I feel they might actually be the biggest letdown of 2025, and that's outside of the scope of the fact that West Coast have finished the season with their worst record in the modern game. But Carlton to be premiership favourites and to fall from grace as hard as they have this season needs to be studied, and it's only going to get worse because there is going to be an exodus of Carlton players. At the point of this time, we have already seen the delistings go down, and seeing Chincotta amongst those delistings I think is fucking wild. Elijah Hollins has been told to go assess his options elsewhere. Tom De Koning's already come out and said he's going to St Kilda. Jack Silvani has all but confirmed he will be going to St Kilda. Sam Walsh is still up in the air. Does he go to Geelong? I don't know, but this is only going to get worse for them. And in a similar boat with Essendon, they've been struck with injuries all year this year, and now they've had their injured ruckman in Sam Draper potentially come out and say he's going to Brisbane. We have had Jordan Ridley come out, another player that has been injury-clad. He has come out and mentioned that he wants to go to Brisbane. Zach Merritt is now going to be reassessing his options. Could he go to Hawthorn? Could he land elsewhere? This upcoming trade period is going to be one of the most bonkers fucking trade periods I think we've had in a very long time. But this particular game, as I said, dead rubber. If you're a Carlton supporter, you were hoping just to pick up a win. You'd found a little bit of momentum coming into the end of the year, so hopefully picking up one more will just send you guys off on a good note, at least, you know, even in the slightest. And Essendon, you just want to be competitive because you've been hit from pillar to post all year. This game, however, was very winnable, and unfortunately for Essendon fans, it didn't fall their way. It went 34 points the way of Carlton in a game that I thought, minus maybe one little moment in the opening quarter where Essendon looked like they were going to get a little bit of a lead going, Carlton just had momentum all their way, and unfortunately it just sums up Essendon's year, and they have been hit so hard with injury, and this is going to be spoken about later on in the video because round 24 had Essendon appear twice, as well as the Gold Coast, to make up for that round 0 rescheduling. I've got some opinions about that, and I would love to know what you guys at home think about that as well. But breaking down the match timeline of this game, Carlton led at quarter time 3-4-22 to 1-4-10. At half time it was 7-6-48 leading 2-6-18. 3-quarter time 11-8-74 leading 5-6-36. And the final score line 13-12-90 defeating 8-8-56. It's hard really to really expect anything too big from Essendon out of this game. Competitiveness maybe, but the fact that they've had 14 or 15 youngsters play in this team and debut this year, very reminiscent of Richmond only a year or two ago when we got smacked so hard with injury and we had to really play almost, I think we actually did play every single Richmond listed player that year. So coming from a sympathetic and empathetic point of view, I completely get where Essendon fans are coming from. Just go out there and you've got nothing to lose. Just throw anything at the wall and hope it sticks. And in some parts, they did look good. And I still feel all of these debutants being blooded this year early are going to hold Essendon in such great stead moving forward. Because in, 3, 4, 5 years' time, they've had so much exposure to the game already that they're going to be hitting their straps earlier than some other rookies that are still sitting on the list. Some of them might only have had a year or two up their sleeve, whereas these guys are transitioning into year 3, year 4. It's going to be a very good watch for them. Unfortunately, at the moment, they're finding themselves in a predicament where they're underperforming underperforming so well that players are now wanting to leave. And that's just going to pose big headaches, especially on the back of Essendon already delisting Alwyn Davey Jr. and Jai Menzie. And I thought Jai Menzie, especially in this game, stood up incredibly well. And we've seen Menzie in recent weeks, and months even, really stand up and deliver for Essendon. I thought he's been one of their better players for that period of time. Unfortunately, Essendon didn't think so, and they thought time was up, and they were going to cut them. 41,150 at the MCG turned out. No injuries, thank Christ, for Essendon, because they don't need it on top of what has been going on. There was obviously a late change in this game. Jayden Laverde and Sam Durham were both replaced late with Zach Johnson and Saad Al-Hawley. No reports. Injury-free for both clubs. It was good to finish on at least a high note in that retrospect, given that Essendon almost every other week had some player going out in some way, shape or form. Breaking down the stats for the game, Carlton actually only defeated Essendon by 15 disposals collectively. Inside 50s, they were monstered by 19. Efficiency around the ground, Carlton were only 0.1% more efficient. Inside 50, Carlton were more efficient. Free kicks, dead even, 19 apiece. Still a bit high, but anyway, we'll roll with it. Stoppages were pretty dead even. This was really a very dead even game. Looking through all the stats here, they were contested all the way down. Unfortunately, it was just a matter of Carlton getting better looks with their inside 50s, which... Can we break down the inside 50s? I've already seen these. Yeah, so 19 more inside 50s for Carlton. They win by 34. It's just the fact that they got the ball inside their 50 more. That's all it was. Around the ground, it was a dead even game. And as I said, as a neutral supporter, that is what I was wanting out of this game. Unfortunately, Carlton, a little bit too efficient moving the ball inside their forward 50 and capitalising just a little bit more. This could have been a much bigger blowout as well, had they have shot accurately. Essendon, even if they were a little bit more accurate, I don't think they would have stemmed the flow too much. So Carlton probably should have won by a much bigger margin, but Essendon hung tough, and 34 points isn't too bad given the scope of things. Looking at the votes for this game, I was drawn to a couple of players, some of which I don't think their names would pop up all too often for votes, and I think they've popped up at the right time, because come the end of the year, exit meetings are going to be happening. You're going to be looking at whether players are going to stay on, whether you move them on in a trade, if they're going to be delisted, what's going to happen. And the one vote for this game goes to a young man. I don't know how young he is, actually. I should probably look up their ages before I say shit like that. I gave it to Francis Evans. I thought over the last month for Carlton, he has been somewhat of a revelation forward of the ball. They have lacked a genuine small forward option, and I feel getting rid of Matt Owies, even though he has absolutely sucked ass monumentally at West Coast this year. Owies was a different beast at Carlton. I don't know why I felt was such an integral piece to their forward half at the Blues. Goes to the Eagles, can't get a touch, can't get a kick. I do not understand it for the fucking life of me. But Francis Evans in this game had 19 disposals, 11 kicks and 8 handballs, 5 marks, 5 tackles, 2 clearances, 333 metres gained, 3 goals, and a game high 12 score involvements. This is the type of player that has really been unearthed at the right time, because now Voss knows he has this player that is capable. You just got to use him correctly. The 2 vote I gave to Mason Redman, and I think over the last probably month and a half to 2 months for Essendon, he's probably been their best player. He has been monumental since coming back from injury. He had 34 disposals, 23 kicks and 11 handballs, 9 marks, 1 tackle, 655 metres gained, and the 6 score involvements. And best on ground, and I think arguably Carlton's best player this year, was George Hewitt. 36 disposals, 12 kicks, 24 handballs, 2 marks, 2 tackles, 10 clearances, 332 metres gained, 1 goal, and 7 score involvements. Going to be interesting to see where these teams go in 2026, because Essendon should get all of these injured players back. Jordan Ridley, Sam Draper, if they stay, locked and loaded. You've got Ben Mackay to come back. I would think Kyle Langford would be 100% more fit and given a proper preseason just to get his body right again. I know he's been playing, but the injury he copped I think has hampered him quite a bit since coming back. Nick Martin to come back in, and that's without talking about some other players like Darcy Parish, Jai Caldwell, these type of players that have had injuries pop up over the course of the year. Fighting fit, Essendon can shoot for the stars and hope for the best, but unfortunately this year it wasn't their run. Carlton, I don't know what's going to happen with them, because TDK out means their primary ruckman right now is Mark Pitnet, and I don't know whether he has the capability of running it on his own. They ran a damaging 2-piece, him and TDK, but can he do it as a solo man? I don't know. Are we going to see Harry Mackay transition into a secondary ruckman? Curnow, linked to a possible trade to Sydney, happy to apparently take a pay cut to go to Geelong. Will he be a Blue in 2026? Interesting watch for both of these clubs. Another round fixtured to have 2 games on Friday night, which is, again, absolutely ridiculous. I think moving forward, the AFL need to implement what the NFL do and do a 3 to 4 round floating fixture. So every 3 to 4 weeks, you get the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that way you can adjust accordingly based on whether teams are performing, so you can give them blockbuster slots. If they're underperforming, you take away that prime time, because it's hard to argue that we were having very watchable games of football on the run home, given that Essendon was taking all the Thursday and Friday night primetime slots away from clubs that were more deserving. I know at the time, nobody could have expected Essendon to cop the injuries and stuff that they did, but still, in theory, Essendon getting all those primetime slots, not what the AFL should be fucking doing. So in my opinion, let's get a floating fixture going every 3 to 4 weeks and book it accordingly. But Friday night, as I said, had 2 games kick off, the first of which was Collingwood taking on Melbourne. Dead rubber for Melbourne and nothing to lose, but Melbourne is one of those teams that in this spot could have caused upset here. Collingwood, I'd have to look at the ladder, but I'm almost certain they were in a position where if they lost this game, they could have missed the top 4 completely. And given their run over the last month, comparatively to the other teams in the top 8, they actually have the worst record out of the last 10 games. I think from the last 10, Collingwood have only won 5. That's huge, given the start they had. And at one point, I was throwing out questions saying, when are they going to lose their next game? Are they going to be on top of the ladder, X amount of games ahead? They were 2.5 games clear at one point and managed to only just scrape into the top 4 in the end. It was suppose the question I feel with their list and whether or not the depth to key position players is strong enough, because when they've seen Jeremy Howe go down with injury, they've been a little bit flustered and struggled quite a bit. And Jeremy Howe, yet again, in this game, injured. This bastard can't take a trick. He has signed a 1-year extension, similarly to Steel Sidebottom, so they're going to be going around again for 2026 with Scott Pendlebury. So the old firm still holding strong for Collingwood. But unfortunately, injuries this year, I feel, to key position moments and players have hurt Collingwood's run home. And I still feel they can do damage during September, starting tomorrow night or tonight by the time this video drops. I don't know when it will drop, but they're taking on Adelaide in Adelaide. We saw a slogfest last time in very poor conditions, but with no Jeremy Howe, could expose them in their defence quite a bit. But, as I said, Collingwood-Melbourne, this game coming down to a singular goal. I did not see this coming at all. Collingwood probably counting themselves lucky they fell over the line given their inaccuracy in this game. And Melbourne, as I said, one of those teams, absolutely nothing to lose except for the fact of maybe a position on the ladder or two, which at this point in time, given their run, I think they'd be happy to maybe drop a position on the ladder and get an earlier pick. But one of those teams that could have caused upset, as I said, and they almost did. This game could have cost Collingwood their top 4 position, and that would have been huge. Breaking down the timeline, there were moments in this game where I thought Melbourne had this absolutely fucking wrapped up, and I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, Collingwood are going to be in an elimination final week 1. This is absolutely shocking. But we've seen Collingwood do this many times this year. Back against the wall, come out swinging and just get the job done. And they did exactly that. Quarter time, they led 2 goals 7-19 to 3 goals straight 18. This could have been a 5-6 goal opening term, and they could have had this game put away beyond belief, but unfortunately that was not the case. At halftime, they led 6-10-46 to 5-3-33. At 3-quarter time, they trailed Melbourne 10-5-65 to 7-13-55, and the final scoreline saw Collingwood get over the line by the singular goal 11-16-82, defeating Melbourne 11-10-76. Those 6 behinds being the point of difference. And we can happily go into the player stats and break down who the culprits were in this game. I mean, Lachie Schultz comes out and kicks 3 behinds. Lipinski kicks 2 behinds. Elliott kicks 2 behinds. Myercheck kicks a behind. Membry only scores a behind. McStay scores a behind. McCreary, Houston, Josh Dacos, and Crisp all kick a behind. A lot of those players very accurate in front of goal. So a little bit of a slap on the wrist, I think, from Fly after the game there. As I said, injury to Howe, it was a groin this time. So we've seen him concussed. We've seen him hurt his leg. We've seen shoulders. And this time it was a groin. I think it's just a roulette wheel right now with him. Just Jeremy Howe stepping up, rolling the fucking ball. Let's see what injury we're landing on this week. 60,611 at the MCG. Very decent crowd to turn out. No other injuries to report. No suspensions or anything like that to report out of this game either. Melbourne, I feel, finished off in the end this year maybe thereabouts to where some people expected. I thought they would have pushed for a final spot maybe once more, because I feel there is going to be an exodus coming at Melbourne eventually. There's talk already about Stephen May and Jake Lever could possibly both be out this year. Does Clayton Oliver have any currency now? Comparatively to the end of last year, before all that pre-season shit went down, he's had a good start to the season, but then dropped off completely. Christian Petrarca, linked now potentially to a move to Hawthorn. I've always said that I envision him moving to Collingwood, and I'm going to stick with that. Bobby Hill is contracted, but there's now talk about potential out-of-state clubs and not Western Australian clubs taking West Coast and Fremantle out of the equation, but apparently other interstate clubs are asking the question now of Bobby Hill. So it's going to be interesting to see with Collingwood and Melbourne. They're locking up players, but they're going to have some players potentially now go elsewhere too. It's going to be a big off season. It's going to be a big movement. Bailey Fritsch has even been floated as a potential move for Melbourne. So going to be interesting. As I said, I'm going to be locked and loaded during that trade time. Don't you worry about that. Having a look at the team stats, Melbourne absolutely dominated disposal. 50 more disposals comparatively around the ground. They had more inside 50. They were more efficient with disposal. However, efficiency inside 50. Collingwood 53.8%. Melbourne only ran at 40%, which is well unders for their season average, which is 50.1. Clearances all the way of Melbourne. They had 12 more. Hit outs, Collingwood 1. Contested possession, uncontested possession, the way of Melbourne. Collingwood had more marks. We know they like to kick around, maintain possession, get momentum back on their side, and that is very much what they did in this game, and it got the job done. At the end of the day, you cannot falter Collingwood for the way that they set up behind the ball, the way they move the ball, how they like to control the ball. It is amongst the best in the competition. But getting over the line here in a game where they should have lost, even the stats back that up, they should count themselves lucky that they finished in the top 4. We could have seen potentially a world where Collingwood lose against Melbourne and then first week of the finals get bounced out after a dominant start to the 2025 season. That would have rattled a few cages, I'm sure. For the votes for this game, I did land on the 1 vote for Christian Petrarca. He had 28 disposals, 14 kicks, 14 handballs, 6 marks, 2 tackles, 6 clearances, 531 metres gained, 1 goal, and 5 score involvements. The 2 vote, I landed on Max Gawn. Still don't think he's been the best ruckman this year, but he was named as the All-Australian ruckman on the night. And stay tuned for that. I'm thinking of doing a video where we look at the All-Australian team that was picked, and we can comment on it, because I've got some comments to make. But he had 23 disposals, 10 kicks, 13 handballs, 7 marks, 2 tackles, 25 hitouts, 3 clearances, 190 metres gained, and 9 score involvements. And best on ground for me was Whisper Nick Dacos. 27 disposals, 14 kicks, 13 handballs, 6 marks, 5 tackles, 5 clearances, 453 metres gained, and 4 score involvements. It's just his influence around the ball that really excites me as a neutral supporter. He has a lot of finesse. He can go missing at times, but when Collingwood needs him, he stands up in those moments. And there were definitely moments in this game that he captured better than any other player on the field, which is why I judged him best on ground. The second game on Friday night saw Port Adelaide taking on the Gold Coast, which did have some ramifications for the top 8. If the Gold Coast won this game, then the outcome from the redo of the Gold Coast Essendon game to finish this round would have meant nothing, because they would have locked up a top 8 spot with a win here. And Port Adelaide, with a go-home game that would see Ken Hinkley wrap up his time as coach, which would see Travis Boak wrap up his time as a player, which would see Connor Rozee, the captain, hit a milestone. They came out with absolute guns blazing, and they ended up picking up a 4-point win in what I thought this year has been one of Port Adelaide's better performances. It was incredibly close. The tackling pressure was great. They looked well when they had ball in hand. It begs the question of where the fuck performances like this have been for most of the year. And I think there are a lot of performances that we can isolate for a number of teams this year and question the exact same thing. They looked so good, Port Adelaide, in this game, and I just had a feeling they would do it for Boak, they would do it for Hinkley, they would stand up for their captain, and Port Adelaide fans were not disappointed. It rattled the cage a little bit of a lot of Gold Coast supporters, because I think Gold Coast would have gone down there thinking that they would have had this game wrapped up, but unfortunately that was not the case. Lord for Port Adelaide is listed as an injury here, but it is listed as to be confirmed, so I don't know whether there was any injuries. And funnily enough, Gold Coast injury list is actually listed as to be confirmed as well. So interesting, very interesting. 40,897 turned out to Adelaide Oval for this game, so collectively Friday night saw about 81, just shy of 82,000 supporters rock up to both games respectively, which is fantastic for the game. Great numbers. Breaking down the team stats, let's have a good look here. Where did it all go down? A lot of people were questioning the free kicks in this game. I remember that vividly, and you will understand why momentarily. When it comes to disposals, it only just fell the way of Port Adelaide slightly. Gold Coast were more efficient with ball just around the ground in general play. The inside 50 efficiency was better by Port Adelaide. The free kick count, we'll talk about the season averages first. Port Adelaide have averaged 18.8 free kicks for the season. The Gold Coast have averaged 21, which I think is up as one of the best teams for average for free kicks. 21 average, Gold Coast got 16 free kicks for the game. With an 18.8 average, Port Adelaide got 33 free kicks. Now, a lot of those free kicks in isolation were for holding the ball, and they were there. They were genuinely there. That being said, even with this bigger gap and disparity, this is what, 49 free kicks paid for a game of football, and I still think there were free kicks missed for both teams. And that's outrageous to think when you've almost got 50 free kicks paid. Hitouts went the way of the Gold Coast, clearances went the way of Port Adelaide, and everywhere else around the ground, minus, again, marking. And what Port Adelaide were doing was what we've seen them do all year. They like to defensively intercept, and they'll happily chip the ball around to find spaces around the ground to move the ball. And that's exactly how they picked apart Gold Coast's offense, moving the ball out of D50 into their own forward 50. it was, as I said, just a definitive performance by Port Adelaide that I just question, where has this been all year? Without Travis Boak, they've delisted a few players as well. Ryan Burton, I think, was stiff to get delisted. Jeremy Finlayson has been delisted. Willie Rioli has retired. Go figure about that. Now, be careful, because now he's open to freely send death threats on everybody and not have any ramifications. So fucking watch out. But yeah, Port Adelaide going to hit reset. They've been linked to players like Will Brodie from Fremantle. I think he'd be a good fit for them. There's a couple of other players, I believe as well. Jacob Ware from GWS has been linked to Port Adelaide, so potentially some midfield half-back type players coming in to maybe bolster them a little bit around the ground. I still feel the biggest spot they need to fix up is their forward half. I mean, Miss Georgiades has had a stellar year this year, but outside of that, who else can we really talk about in that forward half? Fuck all. That's what we're talking about. For this game, I did land on a couple of Port Adelaide players for the votes, and there was one man for the Gold Coast that stood out, and I'm wondering whether he will be able to be pried out of the Gold Coast this year, just given lack of opportunity that he has had. And that is Braden Fiorini. He had 27 disposals, 14 kicks and 13 handballs, 7 marks, 7 tackles, 3 clearances, 308 metres gained, and 6 score involvements. The 2 vote I gave to Connor Rosey, who I still feel, coming off of half-back, was the biggest revelation for Port Adelaide this year. He's found a spot where he just fits so seamlessly. He had plenty of involvement in the midfield in this game as well, but with Jason Horne-Francis to come back in, I think Rosey off of that half-back flank is going to be very tasty to watch moving forward. 34 disposals, 26 kicks and 8 handballs, 5 marks, 7 tackles, 6 clearances, 634 metres gained, 1 goal and 6 score involvements. And best on ground, no surprise, Zach Butters. 35 disposals, 19 kicks, 16 handballs, 8 marks, 8 tackles, 5 clearances, 564 metres gained, and 6 score involvements. Going to be interesting to see what happens with Butters moving forward, because he has been staying at Port Adelaide because of his relationship with Ken Hinkley. But with Hinkley now gone, does he open up the realm of possibility of returning to Victoria? Bulldogs have been linked to him. Collingwood have been linked to him. Hawthorn have been linked to him. St Kilda apparently showing interest because they're happy to throw $1 million a year at anybody at this point in time. Personally, as a Richmond man, I would love to see us pursue Zach Butters. I don't know whether he's in the realm to move to a rebuilding club, but with a couple of first-round picks in hand, could be a move we could make. And I mean, he's only in his mid-20s, pushing his mid-20s. So as a age demographic, still perfectly slotted in for somebody to come into the club. But Gold Coast losing this game did mean that their match against Essendon now became dire straits. They had to beat Essendon in order to make the finals. And that is where the problem lies, and we'll get to it when the time comes. But Port Adelaide capping off their year with a great win to see both Travis Boak and Ken Hinkley off into the sunset, which also brought about a discussion point because the Gold Coast did not see Travis Boak chaired off the field, which I thought was done in bad taste. But it's not the first time that happened over the course of the weekend as well. So we'll talk about that when the time comes too. Just stay tuned. We got shit to talk about. As I said, this was a big round. Saturday afternoon kicked off with North Melbourne hosting Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. I did say in my tipping video, if Adelaide were to be taken seriously, this needed to be a 10+ goal win. They won by 13 points, and I don't know how to fucking justify the outcome of this game. Is it Adelaide coming away from Adelaide Oval and they're struggling? Is it North Melbourne rising to the occasion? Is it Adelaide not wanting to go pedal to the metal because they've got finals coming up, so they were a little bit, I wouldn't say out of gas, but they took, they eased into that final half maybe a little bit more than they should have. In very, very good watch. I found myself really, even though I tipped Adelaide, rooting for North Melbourne to get up over the line here. They're just proving, North Melbourne, that their best can be competitive. It's just, unfortunately, that consistency this year has been their issue. 17,494 rocked up for this game. No injuries or suspensions to report at all. North Melbourne, I think, end their season with their heads held high. I think, given reality versus expectation, they did fail because I thought they would have broken out of the bottom 4 this year. but they have been very competitive. There's been a few games where they've only just lost. They took it to Adelaide. They drew with Brisbane. So they've shown this year that their best is capable of taking it to the competition's best. But then it's few and far between within that. They bullied Richmond this year, and deservingly so. But other teams that they should have been beating, they didn't beat. It's hard to really get a feel on the pulse down at North Melbourne. But I think collectively they might be upset with where they finished this year, but they've shown glimpses in their losses. They showed a lot in this game to wrap up the year, so I definitely feel there's a lot for North Melbourne supporters to hang their hats on. And for Adelaide, they have done one of the biggest turnarounds. I think it actually is the biggest turnaround in the modern game since having 18 teams, at the very least. Could be the biggest of all time. I'd have to check. They finished 15th last year, bottom 4, and they've jumped to first. It's the biggest jump, I believe they're reporting in AFL history, to go from bottom 4 to minor premiers number 1 in the space of 12 months. Absolutely huge. And I've been telling you guys for the last 2 or 3 years, Adelaide has the capability of being amongst the best in the competition. Consistency was their problem, and I think they've knocked consistency out of the way this year. They have definitively shown that their drafting, their trading has all culminated to building the perfect unit, which they currently do have. Breaking down disposals, North Melbourne dominated the game. 60 disposals clear of Adelaide. They were more efficient, just a little bit inefficient inside 50. 11 more free kicks for North Melbourne as well. Interesting. They won the hitouts, they won the clearances, they won contested possession, they won uncontested possession. They did turn the ball over more. They had more marks. They laid just one less tackle for the game. This is huge. North Melbourne monstered Adelaide in almost every single stat, but Adelaide were just able to stem the flow and get the job done. Both teams inaccurate in front of goals, so North Melbourne could have won this game, and the stats show that North Melbourne should have won this game. So again, is this a reflection of how Adelaide's going to perform away from Adelaide Oval? Is this Adelaide taking their foot off the gas, trying to ease into finals a bit better? I don't know how to look at this game. I really do not. It's up in the air. If you're a North Melbourne supporter, if you're an Adelaide supporter, feel free to weigh in the comments down below and let me know how you feel for this game. It was actually a little bit rough to work out who I was going to give votes to, but I think the 3 I landed on could arguably be amongst the best, at least the top 2. I think the one vote you can raffle between a couple. I landed on Ben Keys. 19 disposals, 9 kicks and 10 handballs, 5 marks, 6 tackles, 1 clearance, 299 metres gained, 3 goals and 9 score involvements. The 2 vote I gave to the All-Australian full forward in Riley Thilthorpe. He had 18 disposals, 15 kicks and 3 handballs, 12 marks, 2 tackles, 6 hitouts, 484 metres gained, 3 goals and 11 score involvements. And I gave the 3 vote to the man who I actually thought was this year's best ruckman. A little bit stiff, I feel, to not even get mentioned in the squad of 44. But that was Tristan Cherry. He had 25 disposals, 12 kicks and 13 handballs, 3 marks, 12 tackles, 35 hitouts, 7 clearances, 198 metres gained, and 9 score involvements. North Melbourne, looking next year to get out of the bottom 4. I think that is their main goal. For Adelaide, they've already well and truly exceeded expectation for this year, could potentially go on to win the flag. At this point in time, I have them at least making the grand final. What they do from this point moving on, I feel even if they bomb out back-to-back and they don't even make a prelim, they have exceeded expectation, and what they do in the finals right now is just the cherry on top of a near-perfect run for them this year. Over at the MCG, we had Richmond hosting Geelong for the second time in like 7 weeks. This is why I'm talking about the fixturing needing to be a floating fixture, because Geelong being handed such a soft run home, I think is ridiculous. I think they should have, if anything, maybe pad their mid-year with a little bit something softer, and then ramp it up at the end of the year and make it a little bit more harder for them to make finals. Maybe just a little bit, make them earn it and not have a soft run home. Because when we have a look at the fixturing for this particular team, their last month, and I've said it for most of the year this year, if they didn't finish in the top 4, if they didn't push the top 2, then they were absolutely kidding themselves with the run home they had. Let's have a look at their last 2 months. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Their last 9 games. So have a look here. In their last 9, they played Richmond, GWS, St Kilda, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide, Essendon, Sydney, Richmond again, and then... Actually, no, that's their last 8 because that's this coming final. So fuck me, forget about that. But their last 8, the only team they played that is playing finals this year is GWS. Every other team is well and truly below them. Richmond twice, and their run home on having in their last 5 North Melbourne, Essendon, Sydney, and Richmond. Man, oh man, oh man. This is why it still has me flabbergasted that Jeremy Cameron didn't hit 100 goals by this particular Richmond game at the end of it, because he's had some backlines that he should have absolutely torn apart, and he has failed to do so, and it's making me think he's getting the yips because it's coming to fruition that he could kick 100, and that's playing on his mind because his accuracy has dropped off. He's kicking like 4 goals 4 goals 5 when he could be kicking 5, 6, 7 goals a week, and he would have already hit that marker. But to no surprise, Geelong absolutely dominated this game. 39 points in the end, which I actually thought, given the scope of how bad it was looking at one point in time, we were down at three-quarter time by 65 points. To stem it back to 39, again, was it Geelong taking foot off the pedal because they know they're going into finals? Was it Richmond finding a little bit of bounce back? It was a game that I was able to find some glimmering light out of for Richmond. And this year, it was never about where we would end on the ladder at all. It was always about getting the exposure into the young kids and really just having a crack. And in that retrospect, I'm a happy man. I can't be upset with Richmond. I know where we're heading as a club. The players we've got look set to be absolute gems. We still have Josh Smiley to debut. We still haven't really had a good look at Sam Lawler because he's been injured. We've got 2 first-rounders coming into the upcoming draft. Do we trade those away? Do we break them down for other picks? Do we bring players in? Apparently, Richmond's open to any and all. And they've made that decision with some delistings. We've seen Jacob Kajiski delisted. Obviously, Cam McIntosh is not going to get another contract, so he's effectively been delisted as well. We had Jacob Bauer delisted, which hurt me a little bit because I really liked him as a player. Mate Colina got delisted, never made an AFL debut. I don't know why we persisted with him. Jacob Blight got delisted. Now, funny with that, he had a extension clause on his contract where if he only played 1 more game this year, it would have automatically triggered. And we've been able to select him for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we haven't done so. So that told me we were happy to see him go. As much as it upsets me because I do rate him as a player, we've got the likes of Noah Bolter, Ben Miller, Tyler Young, Josh Gibkiss. We've got players ahead of him. And unfortunately, going to be a hard defensive unit to break into. And that's even without naming Broad or Vlosten, who are still going to be around for a handful of years. Breaking down the timeline for this game, however. At quarter time, Geelong led 6-7-43 to 2-2-14. Half time, 11-12-78 led 2-3-15. At three-quarter time, as I said, 13-17-95 led 4-6-30. And the final scoreline saw Geelong win 14-19-103 to 9-10-64. I did say Cameron was a little bit wasteful. He kicked 4 goals 4. I felt he could have potentially kicked 6 or 7 in this game. So now it's going to come down to finals, and I don't know whether he's going to do it. I'd have to check to see how many goals he's currently on. He'd be close to the 80s by now, surely. But I don't know whether he will make it, because I feel Geelong, if they make the grand final, they're going to do it the easy way. They're going to win week 1, they're going to go straight to a prelim, win again, and then bang, they're in the grand final. I feel even if they have to go the long route and they lose the first week, then have to play a semi, then a prelim, and then the grand final, he still might not make it because the caliber of the defensive lines he's coming up against have capabilities of completely shutting him down. So, I don't know. This may be the make or break for him. He's the first person in years to come close to 100 goals. And who knows? It could be many more years after this year that somebody gets this close again. So, all the power to him. I would love to see him make it, but I don't know whether he does. 46,109 turned out to this game. Great numbers for a final hit out, with most Richmond people, actually probably all Richmond people, would have thought we were going to get absolutely belted in this game, but they still turned out anyway. Breaking down the team stats, this shocked me. Richmond actually won the disposal count. They had one less inside 50. They were only 3% less effective with the ball around the ground. They were 21% less efficient inside 50, which absolutely killed us. We did have 11 less free kicks, but I'm not going to go there. Hit-outs were even. Clearances were dead even. We had more uncontested possession. We took, 14 more marks around the ground. We laid 17 less tackles, which is crazy to think we dominated with disposal. We had more disposal, but we laid less tackles. Go figure. I think that's our big issue. For Richmond, moving forward, we need to find some midfielders that have pace and tackling pressure, and we need to really configure that inside mid, because as much as I rate Dion Prestia, Tim Taranto, and Jacob Hopper as individuals, we cannot continue as a club having those three at every centre bounce at the same time, because we are too fucking slow. Geelong, on the other hand, they've done it again. They just find ways every year to get the job done and always be at the pointy end of the season. And I feel they're going to deliver big, because at this point in time, my grand final is Adelaide versus Geelong. They have been, at least for the second half of the season, the best clubs in the comp. I think for the first half of the season, it's still hard to argue against. Collingwood was the best team. It's now Geelong's final to lose. They're primed to win another flag, and it's upsetting a few, but you can't deny they're just finding ways to get it done. They just keep on keeping on. For the 3-2-1, all the way of Geelong, the first of which I gave 1 vote to Jeremy Cameron. He did have the 20 disposals, 15 kicks and 5 handballs, 7 marks, 1 tackle, 2 clearances, 514 metres gained, 4 goals, and a game-high 14 score involvements. The 2 vote I gave to Bailey Smith. 34 disposals, 16 kicks and 18 handballs, 3 marks, 4 tackles, 7 clearances, 594 metres gained, and 10 score involvements. And best on ground to me, again, having a very underrated season, he did finish the year with the most tackles by any player comfortably for 2025, and that was Tom Atkins. He had 27 disposals, 13 kicks and 14 handballs, 6 marks, 9 tackles, 2 clearances, 462 metres gained, and 12 score involvements. I don't know what we are hanging on for the most here with Geelong. Are we expecting a flag? Or are we waiting for Jeremy Cameron to kick 100 goals? Does he kick 100 on grand final day if they make it? Because that could be a momentum killer for any club. Imagine Adelaide and Geelong are in the grand final. Jeremy Cameron goes and kicks his 100th goal. There's maybe a goal or 2 in it at this point in time. Everybody floods the fucking MCG. They have to get all the players off. They need everything to calm down. Players, to get ready to go back out. All the spectators to get back in their seats. And then it's a dead rubber, because all momentum's been killed. Players are not, they've gotten out of rhythm. They have to re-warm up. We all saw what happened when Buddy Franklin kicked his 1,000th goal, as I stumble across my words. He kicked 1,000 and the exact same thing happened. And I think Hawthorn came back out and opposition kicked 3 or 4 goals, and Hawthorn didn't score for the remainder of that 4.5 minutes or 5 minutes, what was left over. So it's going to be an interesting watch. But I think right now, Geelong are primed to be in the last day of September. Speaking of dead rubber games, could it have been any more fucking dead rubber than West Coast taking on Sydney at Optus Stadium? Stupidly enough, I thought West Coast could be competitive in this game, and Sydney won by 67 points. This, as I said, has been the worst result from West Coast, I believe, in history. They, at least since there's been 24 rounds to play, they finished 1-23. 1-23. Looking back on previous years, they have won at least 2, 3, 4 games. So this has been a huge step backwards for them. And they're now talking about draft packages and everything else. And I still feel it's poor list management. You keep giving extensions to older players. You don't trade away your top picks or break those picks down to get multiple players in. Look at the year they did that when they brought in Ruben Jinbi. And I can't remember who else they brought in with the other pick. Oh, who was it? I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's a solid talent as well. Do that more often. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they've signed Harley Reid for an extra 2 years, which I think is great, given the fact that reports are that he knocked back an 11-year deal from Hawthorn that was almost 1.7, 1.8 million a season. $13 million plus left on the table to stay at West Coast for 2 years. Going to be interesting, though, because that gives time for Tasmania to come into the competition, for other clubs to free up salary cap space. I can guarantee you, Harley Reid will not be at West Coast heading into 2028. That's my big call coming out of this game. Let's just get straight into it, because this was so boring. I just want to get over the fucking match summary so quickly. Match timeline. At quarter time, they did lead 3-2-20 to 1-1-7. They did lead at half time 6-6-42 to 5-5-35. And I thought, okay, this is all right. Things are going good for West Coast. They might finish their season with a win here. Nope. No, definitely not, because three-quarter time, Sydney led 11-7-73 to 6-7-43, with West Coast only managing to kick one behind in that term, and the final score line was 18-10-118, defeating West Coast 7-9-51. Put in perspective, in the second half, Sydney went on to kick 13 goals 5. West Coast went on to kick 1 goal 3. Enough perspective for you? Don't think it's any surprise here. You look at the team stats, it is like 60 disposals the way of Sydney. Efficiency way better. Inside way better. They had 11 less free kicks, Sydney, for the game. Put that into perspective. Dominated the hitouts. Just won the clearances. But again, uncontested possession, they monstered them. Marks monstered them. Defense, they laid one less tackle. But they were absolutely beaten to a pulp in that second half. Were there any injuries out of this game? I cannot recall off the top of my head, so we need to turn our attention. Yes, Ruben Jinby did do an injury to his right leg. I think he's been one of their better players this year, Ruben Jinby. I really rate him. 36,029 it turned out for the game, which is a pretty decent return, actually, given the situation. West Coast fans do rock up all the time, though. I'll give them credit. They love to rock up for their team. Even though this is a bottom of the barrel, kind of match, they know they're going to finish in that bottom slot. They might have had hope they could win this game, maybe, because Sydney's out of their element a little bit at Optus. But Sydney absolutely just destroyed them. And again, another team that has failed expectations severely. They played in the grand final this year. They've missed the, I think they finished what? Did they finish? No, they didn't finish 9th. They finished 10th, I think, maybe. Still way under. I mean, they've had injuries this year to key position players that fucked their season quite severely. So moving forward, be interesting to see how they go, especially with Charlie Curnow potentially linked to a move there. Can they land him? I don't know. But all three of my votes landed the way of Sydney in this game comfortably. The one vote I gave to Isaac Heaney. He had 26 disposals, 11 kicks and 15 handballs, 5 marks, 4 tackles, 10 clearances, 347 metres gained, 1 goal and 11 score involvements. The 2 vote I gave to the Pap Smear, Tom Papley. He had 27 disposals, 19 kicks and 8 handballs, 8 marks, 4 tackles, 2 clearances, 628 metres gained, 3 goals and 13 score involvements. He's one of those players they've missed this year, just through injury. If he had been in their team at the first half of the season, they could very well be playing finals this year. I really do feel that. Best on ground for me, again, a player they could have desperately used in the first half of the year was Errol Goulden. 36 disposals, 21 kicks and 15 handballs, 10 marks, 3 clearances, 639 metres gained, 2 goals and 10 score involvements. This was just an absolute beatdown. This was Sydney finishing on a high. This was West Coast hanging their heads low in a club worst, and I don't know where it gets better for them moving forward. No Dom Sheed, no Jeremy McGovern. They still have Elliot Yeo to come back, but will he truly add anything just with how he's been breaking down with injury? Sydney, they reset, and I think they bounce back. I think Sydney do make the top 8 next year. I'm going to make that bold call now. But it's going to be just really, really close watch on both these clubs, just to see where they go moving forward, because we know one of them's going to bounce back, but with West Coast, it's up in the fucking air. Where do they go? I don't fucking know. Sunday had 3 games, and all 3 of those had the biggest ramifications, I feel, over the course of the weekend. Sunday was huge, because it was going to make or break teams playing finals, and positional changes, and it had everything, and it did not fail. to disappoint. It kicked off with GWS hosting St Kilda at NG Stadium in a game that saw GWS walk away with a win by 11 points. St Kilda fought tooth and nail. St Kilda were never going to play finals, but are one of those teams, just like Melbourne, that could have caused enough upset to change the balance of things. GWS picking up the win does have them finishing, I believe, in 5th place overall, which has them playing a home final. So this win was huge for them. Breaking down the timeline and just seeing how St Kilda came back here was so great to watch. At quarter time, it was GWS leading 4-3-27 to 2-5-17. At halftime, St Kilda were in the lead marginally, 6-7-43 ahead of 6-6-42. At three-quarter time, they were in front marginally, 10-8-68, leading 10-7-67. They did get out to a lead in the final term, and I thought, fuck, here we go, this is going to be very close. But in the end, it was GWS 15-14, 104, defeating St Kilda 14-9, 93. We've seen Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira stand tall in dying moments to win games. Even though he didn't kick goals to secure the win, Toby Green had just as big of an impact in this game. He took an absolute hanger in the dying moments, hit the post with that kick, but then in the very next play, took a very courageous mark to turn the ball back over again and win it back for GWS, with them kicking the goal to all but lock this up. Because at that point in time, they were only 5 points ahead. Anything could have happened, and Darcy Jones ended up strolling in and kicking what was essentially the match-winning goal to put them up by 11 points. Was a great watch. This is a GWS unit that comes into finals primed and ready to go. I feel out of the teams outside of the top 4, they could probably do the most damage, I feel. Caniglio out of this game with concussion. The interesting thing, though, is we've had a week off, so he should be available for selection given that fact. Mateus Philippou did a calf for St Kilda as well. 10,563 at NG Stadium is not a bad result, knowing that GWS don't really get that many fans turning out. So that was decent for them. Going to be an interesting watch for them moving forward, though, because, again, Caniglio coming off with a concussion. I don't know whether Jesse Hogan is going to be fit to come back. So team announcements this week, going to be interesting to watch. GWS stat-wise absolutely killed St Kilda around the contest. The only thing they lost in was their efficiency was 1.1% worse. Everywhere else around the ground, every stat falls the way of GWS, and it just goes to show they just went to town and got the job done. For St Kilda, hang your hats high, I feel, on this particular outing here, because you've shown enough against a finals competing team, and St Kilda are only going to get better. Already secured the services of TDK in the ruck. Already signed up Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira. Jack Silvani wants to go to St Kilda. Liam Ryan linked to St Kilda. There are a couple of other players linked to St Kilda, including Sam Flanders, who apparently has had a meeting with St Kilda mid-year. I don't understand how St Kilda have had this rough of a year and have just become a overnight destination club. Fucking insane. Let's talk about the votes for this game, because there were a couple of players I voted for who, when going through and redoing my votes again throughout the year, there were some players here that I felt have had very underrated seasons and could have very well been All-Australian, at least nominated, but didn't make it. The one vote I gave to Darcy Wilson. Absolute shining light for St Kilda. 23 disposals, 11 kicks and 12 handballs, 4 marks, 2 tackles, 1 clearance, 355 metres gained, 5 goals and 10 score involvements. Huge. Huge. He's going to be a huge playing factor for St Kilda moving forward, and I thought he was instrumental in ensuring they were this close. I mean, you take away the 5 goals he kicked, and they get absolutely blown out of the water. So, good work to that young man. 2 vote I gave to Toby Green. As I said, just those instrumental moments in the dying moments of that game to make sure the win was locked up and secured. Huge captain moment for him. 17 disposals, 13 kicks and 4 handballs, 5 marks, 2 tackles, 1 clearance, 402 metres gained, 4 goals and 11 score involvements. He was stiff to not make the 44-man squad for the All-Australian. I thought, comparatively to a Zach Bailey who made it, comparatively to a Keziah Pickett, I think Toby Green has more merit just off of what he's done this year to make that squad. That's just me. Best on ground, another man who I think was snubbed from the 44, Lachie Whitfield. 31 disposals, 23 kicks and 8 handballs, 7 marks, 6 tackles, 544 metres gained. Only had the 2 score involvements, but that's not really his job. Very, very solid year this year, Lachie Whitfield, and I think they have robbed him of potentially being rewarded because he not even making that 44-man squad, I think, is absolutely egregious. He's had a huge year. As I said, though, GWS, I think, outside of the top 4 that have finished in there, so Adelaide, Brisbane, Collingwood, Geelong, I think GWS are the team to watch outside of that configuration. If they can get players like Hogan and stuff back in, they're going to be fucking dangerous. Down at Marvel Stadium, West Coast took on Fremantle, and this game had the biggest ramifications of them all. The winner plays finals, the loser does not. It was that simple, and there was only one thing that could have changed that, and that was if the Gold Coast would then go on to lose against Essendon on Wednesday night. And that's where I start having problems with that. Oh, we'll get to it. But it was Fremantle by 15 points in the end in a game that I think a lot of Western Bulldogs supporters are going to be very upset. To put to a scope here, Western Bulldogs have been a bit of a meme, and I've spoken about it many times this year as well. They've been able to beat up teams underneath them, but can't beat teams above them. It's been pretty simple. Richmond finished second last on the ladder this year and beat the same amount of top 8 teams that the Bulldogs did. And that was with us losing by 6 points to GWS. And had we had won that game, we would have won more games against top 8 teams than the Bulldogs did. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just so hard to get my head around how this happens. And I feel we can only point it to one thing. And I could be scapegoating, but I think it's Luke Beveridge. I just think his coaching style has passed the Bulldogs. I think he doesn't have a plan B for better teams. He has something set in his mind that he thinks is going to work, and if it fails, he's got no other pivot point. And if you take out Bontempelli carrying this team on his fucking back, Ed Richards standing tall this year, Liberatore carrying this team, Dale carrying this team, they are a team of great individuals. They're just not a great team. Is that a bit harsh? Is that me being a little bit too harsh? I don't know. But Fremantle just looked the goods in this game, and it was a game that the Bulldogs came out flying, and I thought, here we go, the Bulldogs are gonna get it done. And then Fremantle just went bang, 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 and it was just all too late. Bulldogs tried hard to mount a comeback, but Fremantle were just too far ahead at that point in time that it was just a matter of how big of a margin Fremantle were going to win by. At quarter time, the Bulldogs commanded the lead 4-5-29 to 2-2-14. At halftime, Fremantle had bounced it around at 9-4-58, leading 4-8-32. And then after that, it was all the way of Fremantle. 13-6-84, leading 7-10-52 at three-quarter time. And full time saw Fremantle win 17-10-112, defeating the Bulldogs 14-13-97. Again, 15 points. Inaccuracy coming back to haunt. Who were the inaccurate ones, you wonder? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we can point the fact that Libba kicking 2 behinds, Garcia kicking 2 behinds, Croft kicked 2 behinds, Norton kicked a behind, Kennedy kicked a behind, Davidson, Darcy, Bontempelli, Oscar Baker. Yeah, and there were some players that didn't even hit the scoreboard. Riley West has been so huge. He only kicked 2 goals. I thought he would have had a much bigger game than that. Would have thought Aaron Norton, given the run home he's had, would kick more than 2. Yeah, very interesting. Sam Darcy didn't hit the scoreboard at all. He got shut down big time. That was a great game by Alex Pearce on him. And I think that was deciding factor. Being able to take an influence away like Sam Darcy was huge. Injuries out of this game, though. Corey Wagner did a pectoral injury, and Sam Switkowski did an ankle. So, don't know whether either of those players are going to be available for Fremantle this week, which is going to be rough, because Switkowski is a great X-Factor type player, forward half of the ball for them, and Corey Wagner has been playing a very good lockdown role on specific players. So, he could have played a very instrumental part against the Gold Coast this coming round. He could have been a player to run with Anderson, to run with Rao, but unfortunately they might not have him there. 44,069 at Marvel Stadium. Thank you very much. Was the final home and away game we will see of Nat Fyfe. Fremantle living on a dream now. Can they make the grand final for arguably the best docker to ever play the game? I don't know. I don't think they can. I've been riding them as the dark horse all year this year, but I don't know. There's just something about GWS now that's really turned me around to their favour instead. In this game, the Bulldogs dominated almost everything, minus a couple of stats. So it was one of those games, again, that come down to just splitting hairs and being more efficient inside forward 50, which Fremantle was with the ball, 3% more. And that's just little differences like that. Being able to be more efficient in your own forward half while shutting down key players from your opposition gets the job done. And Fremantle should hang their heads held high, because I'm pretty sure the last time these two teams played each other, didn't the Bulldogs absolutely fucking massacre them? I can't remember. But at any rate, turning attention to our votes for this game, it's one of those games where, even though Fremantle won, the Bulldogs are getting more of the votes here. And that does happen sometimes, unfortunately. But the one vote, couldn't look past Caleb Sarong. I thought he was the better player for Fremantle. He had 24 disposals, 15 kicks and 9 handballs, 5 tackles, 7 clearances, 584 metres gained, and 4 score involvements. The 2 vote I gave to Tim English. I think he's really lit the second half of this year alight. Will he go to West Coast? Will that trade finally happen? I don't know. Stay tuned and find out. 15 disposals, 10 kicks and 5 handballs, 6 marks, 7 tackles, 40 hitouts, 2 clearances, 255 metres gained, and 6 score involvements. Definitely quality from quantity. Best on ground for me, Marcus Bontempelli. 33 disposals, 19 kicks, 14 handballs, 7 marks, 6 tackles, 11 clearances, 680 metres gained, 2 goals, and 8 score involvements. This man is a fucking machine. He might go down, I feel, in history as the best player to ever play the game and not win a Brownlow medal. Because while he stays in a team with Dale, with Richards, with Liberatore, with English in parts, with Darcy in parts, he is playing in a team where too many teammates are going to take votes away from him, and he's never going to get the recognition he deserves. My big call. My big call. Should have already had 2 Brownlows around his neck already, in my opinion. But the Bulldogs finish in 9th. Fremantle move on to play finals this year. Do they lose to the Gold Coast at home? Can they find a win to move their season on to a semi-final berth and keep the dream of Nat Fyfe at least looking at another Premiership Cup alive? Who knows? The final game on Sunday had a ramification in it that would see the winner finish in the top 4. Brisbane going head-to-head with Hawthorn at the Gabba. And we know this year, the Gabba has not been a fortress for Brisbane. So I thought Hawthorn were going to win this game. But it was Brisbane stepping away as 10-point victors. And before we even get into it, these two teams, they're going to be so bolstered next year. We've already got Hawthorn being spoken about, going after Petrarca, going about Zach Merritt, looking at fucking Zach Butters. We've got Brisbane Lions, who are already linked to Oscar Allen, Sam Draper, Jordan Ridley. The good teams are just going to keep getting better. So we're going to keep seeing these guys appear at these, deep ends of the season in such a big way. How do they do it? How do they fucking do it? This could have been a monster blowout though, and Hawthorn did very well to stem the flow. At quarter time, they actually did lead 3-3-21 to 8 behinds. Brisbane again. I feel inaccuracy is going to undo Brisbane, and that's why I don't think they're going to make the grand final this year, because I feel if they leave the door open in games like this against Geelong, Adelaide, Collingwood, they're done for. At half-time, they managed to get the lead back, 6-10-46, leading 6-5-41. They blew out to a huge, huge lead early on in the third term, but the third term did finish 8-19-67, leading 8-8-56. And the final score line saw Brisbane winning 11-23-89, defeating 11-13-79, 10 behinds difference. This is huge. They kicked 10 behinds in the first term, 8 of which were kicked in the first quarter. In the second half, they kicked a further 13 behinds, 9 of which were kicked in the third term. I don't think that's good enough football to win them games against the other teams. I really don't. Lachie Neale could come back for finals, so that'd be big for Brisbane, especially now that they have the second chance. No injuries out of this game. 32,086 turned out. That is a decent return, I feel. Who's primed better for finals? Are Hawthorn primed better than Brisbane? I do not know. Breaking down the team stats real quick, Brisbane did have 50 more disposals. They were more efficient, both around the ground and inside 50. They won the hitouts, they won the clearances. Everything fell the way of Brisbane. Obviously, inaccuracy in front of goal almost just cost them the game. But that being said, that inaccuracy, that could have easily been 20 goals. kicked for the game. And this is the difference between Brisbane and other teams in the comp. Can't be kicking 23 behinds against Geelong, against Adelaide. Those teams are going to absolutely destroy you when the time comes. For the votes for this game, as close as the game was, I did fall all the way of 3 Brisbane Lions. The one vote I gave to Cam Rayner. 22 disposals, 15 kicks and 7 handballs, 5 marks, 4 tackles, 3 clearances, 579 metres gained, 2 goals and 7 score involvements. Hugh McCluggage gets the 2, and I'm glad to see him in the All-Australian. He has had a stellar year this year. 32 disposals, 16 kicks and 16 handballs, 7 marks, 4 tackles, 3 clearances, 457 metres gained, 2 goals and 11 score involvements. And best on ground for me was Josh Dunkley, who a lot of people are saying was stiffed for All-Australian, but I don't think he was better than the other midfielders that were named. That's just my opinion. He did finish on 33 disposals, 12 kicks and 21 handballs, 9 marks, 8 tackles, 5 clearances, 284 metres gained, and 9 score involvements. Brisbane will be taking on Geelong at the MCG this coming week, with Hawthorn having to travel to GWS, to NG Stadium. Is Brisbane, I don't know, if Brisbane are inaccurate like this against Geelong at the MCG, they're playing the next week. Geelong get a walk to the prelim. Hawthorn GWS, really line ball. I think the home advantage goes the way of GWS, but both of these teams run a very similar type of game. They like the run and carry, so I feel that very well may be one of the better finals to watch over the course of the weekend. Who's better suited for the run home to the grand final? Let me know in the comment section down below. We did have one more game for this round, and it was played on Wednesday night at People's First Stadium between the Gold Coast and Essendon. This was a rescheduled game from round 0 because those hurricanes and cyclones and everything were going on up at Queensland. I'm not going to talk about this game for long because I'm happy for the Gold Coast for making finals for the first time. That's fucking fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I think this should have been fixtured differently. There is no way in round 0 Gold Coast beat Essendon by 95 points. No way. Mackay, Martin, Redmond fit, Langford fit, Draper in the team, Caldwell fit, Parrish potentially playing. There's no way they lose by almost 100 points. There is no way. And even if they didn't lose by 100 points, I feel they wouldn't have lost by more than 50. And that would have had ramifications of Gold Coast only finishing 8th instead of 7th, which further pushes other teams down the ladder for draft picks and things of that nature. This could have been rescheduled earlier on in the season like that Brisbane rematch was. I'm pretty sure the Brisbane game got rescheduled and got rescheduled quick. Don't know why this hung on for so late. Some people trying to convince me that maybe they did so because they thought both of these teams would have been fighting for a top 8 finish and it would have been blockbuster to have it there. But unfortunately, it didn't fall that way. And this is why I feel a floating fixture would be great, because we could have done this at a different time. That's all I'm saying. At the end of the day, as I said, this game was over at quarter time. 7-4-46 led 1 goal 6. Yeah, 40 points clear. How much are Gold Coast going to win by? That's what the fact of the matter was at that point in time. Half time, 9-10-64 led 3-4-22. 3-quarter time was 15-15, 105, leading 5-6-36. Final score, 23-15, 153, defeating Essendon 8-10-58. Want to break down the team stats? 80 more disposals. Gold Coast had 404 disposals for the game. That is huge. Fucking monstered. 80% as the disposal efficiency around the ground. 59 in front of goal. They absolutely dominated the hitouts. Clearances were closer than I would have thought, but everything else just kept going the way of Gold Coast. It was a smacking and a half. I mean, it was the most morale-boosting thing that could have happened for the Gold Coast, because now they come into that final spot with the utmost faith that they can do absolutely everything. And it's absolutely demoralising for Essendon, because they've had to play 2 games in the one round, and they get absolutely belted to finish their year by almost 100 points. It's not good for young kids. It really isn't. Guelphy finished this game with a corked calf. Goldstein ended with a concussion. 16,768 turned out to the game. Decent turnout, obviously, with finals on the line, given the fact that they needed to win this game, the Gold Coast. Otherwise, it would have been the Bulldogs finishing in 8th, and that is not the case. I yeah, I just feel this game should have been fixtured differently. We should have seen this maybe round 1 or 2. Even then, I feel Essendon would have been more competitive. Maybe I could have seen maybe a 40-point loss at the start of the year, not 95. There's no fucking way. You can't convince me otherwise. Obviously, 95 points the way of Gold Coast. 3 votes go their way. And it's 3 names that have been synonymous with the Gold Coast all year this year. Ben King gets the 1 vote with 8 disposals, which was just 8 kicks. 6 marks, 227 metres gained, 7 goals, and 8 score involvements. This is why this stat line, I feel, puts the argument forward that even though Ben King kicked more goals than Riley Thilthorpe, the fact that Thilthorpe gets up the ground, gets more disposals, gets more involved in the game, gets more solid score involvements, can do hit-outs as a ruckman as well, has a more comprehensive game to him, so even though he kicked less, I feel he's had a better year. Just my opinion. The 2 vote I gave to Noah Anderson. He had 34 disposals, 19 kicks and 15 handballs, 3 marks, 12 clearances, 634 metres gained, 3 goals and 8 score involvements, with best on ground going to Matt Rowell. 31 disposals, 13 kicks and 18 handballs, 8 tackles, 5 clearances, 396 metres gained, 2 goals and 11 score involvements. And the reason I feel Noah Anderson will not win the Brownlow this year is because of Matt Rowell, and similar circumstances flipped around. These two steal way too many votes off of one another. And there are some games where Noah Anderson might feature but Matt Rowell missed. And I feel there's going to be games where Matt Rowell features and Noah Anderson missed. But yeah, they'll always steal a vote or 2 from each other consistently. And it'd be great to see Noah Anderson win the Brownlow. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Same with Matt Rowell. But I just feel too many votes go the way of one or another. And it's going to cost them. It's going to cost them. The Gold Coast, however, finishing in 7th, have to go to Fremantle to take on Fremantle at Optus Stadium. Will they get the job done? Can they keep their hopes alive? My old man feels the Gold Coast are the better team primed outside of the top 4 and the ones that need to be watched. I don't know. How do you think about it? Now that the votes have been cast and tallied up, I did say at the start of the video there was a technical glitch on my end. All year, I've had an Excel spreadsheet where at the end of every round recap, I would sit down, type in every single vote, and it would tally it up for me. But there were some rounds that weren't saving those tallies, so there'd be one round where a player would have 24 votes, and then the following week, he'd have less. But then he'd be up to the same again, and I just thought, nah, we're going to scrap this whole thing. I'm going to sit down and watch every round recap video I've made for 2025, hand write out every single vote, and do my list from scratch. And we do have now a definitive, calculated and precise list. And instead of doing a top 5, because it's the final round, because this determines my MVP for the 2025 season, I'm going to do a top 10, which is going to highlight some players that I feel haven't been spoken about enough this year, but have had a good year in my eyes. So, for the final time for the home and away season, because I will do a vote system for the finals to determine my best on ground and MVP for the final series. This is how my MVP award for the 2025 home and away season has finished. In equal 10th place on 16 votes, I have Geelong's Max Holmes and Brisbane's Dane Zorko. In 9th place, on equal 17 votes, I have GWS's Tom Green and Essendon's Zach Merritt. In 8th place, on equal 18 votes, I have GWS's Finn Callaghan and St Kilda's Nasiah Wanganeen Malira. In 7th place, on 20 votes, I have Port Adelaide's Connor Rozee. In 6th place, on 21 votes, I have Fremantle's Andrew Brayshaw. In 5th place, on 23 votes, I have Western Bulldogs' Marcus Bontempelli. In 4th place, on equal 24 votes, I have Gold Coast Matt Rowell and Port Adelaide's Zach Butters. Now for my top 3. This is where things start to get interesting. In 3rd place, on equal 27 votes, I have Fremantle's Caleb Sarong and Gold Coast's Noah Anderson. In 2nd place, on equal 32 votes, I have Geelong's Bailey Smith and Adelaide's Jordan Dawson. And in 1st place, my MVP for 2025 with 36 votes is Collingwood's Nick Dacos. I don't think you can argue any of those players have not stood tall for their teams this year. I feel I personally feel, even though I didn't vote for him as often as I did for Bailey Smith, I think collectively, stat-wise, Max Holmes has had the better year than Bailey Smith. Tom Green and Finn Callaghan don't get spoken about enough for their years, and I think they could be big movers on getting GWS potentially to a grand final this year. Zach Merritt deserves more attention than what he gets, and I feel playing for Essendon squashes that attention. Rosie, as I said, he was a shock finishing in 7th for me. A huge year off of halfback. Matt Rowell finishing 4th and Noah Anderson finishing 3rd. Again, there were games where sometimes they didn't feature. They stole votes off of one another, but that's just my opinion. The AFL could vote differently for the Brownlow. You guys could feel differently at home. So when it comes to things like this, feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. But Nick Dacos winning it, I mean, he won the MVP for the season this year. He doesn't have anyone stealing votes from him. When he does poll, he's always polling 3s and 2s. He stands tall. He is a very moment-based player. He seizes the moment when it's there, and he is my definitive player of the season. I know some people are going to hate it, but that's where we landed. Moving on to a team-based approach now, we can now finally see how the AFL ladder shaped up after 24 rounds of home and away action. In first place on 72 points, we have the Adelaide Crows. They finished ahead of Geelong, who finished 2nd with 68 points, Brisbane, who finished in 3rd with 66 points, and Collingwood, who finished in 4th with 64 points. They only finished in 4th place by percentage, ahead of GWS, who finished in 5th, and Fremantle, who finished in 6th, both with 64 points respectively as well. Gold Coast finished in 7th with 60 points, ahead of Hawthorn in 8th place on 60 points. The Bulldogs finished in 9th on 56 points. Sydney finished in 10th on 48 points. We then have Carlton in 11th, St Kilda in 12th, and Port Adelaide in 13th, all on 36 points. Melbourne finished in 14th with 28 points. Essendon finished in 15th with 24 points. North Melbourne finished in 16th with 22 points. Richmond finished in 17th with 20 points. And West Coast finished dead last in 18th with 4 points. There is all but one thing left to do to officially recap the home and away season and round 24, ladies and gentlemen, and that is to announce my team of the week for round 24, which I think was very line ball. This was really easy to pick. So without further ado, this is my team of the week for round 24. In the back line, I have Mason Redman and Lockie Ash in the back pockets and Stephen May at fullback, with Lockie Whitfield and Connor Rozee on the halfback flanks, and Tom Stewart at centre halfback. Across the centre, I have Bailey Smith and Errol Goulden on the wings, and Matt Rowell in the centre. In the forward line, I have Tom Papley and Darcy Wilson in the forward pockets, and Ben King at full forward, with Cam Rayner and Toby Green on the half forward flanks, and Jeremy Cameron at centre half forward. In the ruck line, I have Tristan Cherry in the ruck, with Noah Anderson in ruck rover as this week's captain, and Zach Butters in ruck rover. My interchange has Nick Dacos, Marcus Bontempelli, George Hewitt, and Josh Dunkley. My sub for the week is Francis Evans, and my coach of the week is Ken Hinkley, winning his final game as Port Adelaide coach against the Gold Coast. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. The round has been officially recapped. I am not sure whether this is dropping Wednesday night or Thursday morning, but in any case, we have the finals kicking off either later tonight or tomorrow night, and I'm very keen to see how that goes down. I will be doing tipping videos over the course of the finals. I will be doing round recaps over the course of the finals. We'll be doing who I feel is best on ground for those games and doing a finals leaderboard as well for a finals MVP before heading into the grand final, doing a definitive look at how both teams that have made the grand final have ran, and we can do a real deep dive analysis. And then the postseason is going to see us things like interacting with the All-Australian that was picked, the best 22 under 22 that was picked, analysing teams' performances for the year, talking about the trade period, and any other content you would like to see, let me know down below. But that is it. Video is finished. Round has been recapped for the final time for the 2025 home and away season. Thank you all so much for coming on this journey with me. Transitioning to this channel and doing this as its own thing has been a big move for myself. 140 people have gotten on board so far. Thank you all for getting behind me and supporting what I do. Hopefully moving forward, we can become bigger and better, and we can do bigger and better things together. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Do leave a like on the video if you enjoyed. Do hit that subscribe button if you want to get on board the community we are joining here. If your team didn't make finals, commiserations. I know how it feels. If your team did make finals, congratulations, and let's see how deep you get. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.